What's up, guys? This is Jack McNeil, MLB Talk 123. Hope you guys are having a great night. Now, make sure to follow me on Twitter at MLB Talk 123 for the latest news on my all-new baseball podcast, Still Developing. Now, let's get to the news of tonight. The Indians have finally made that big splash they've been promising their fan base for the past few months now. They've been talking about this new direction that they're going in. They bring in Terry Francona. They bring in some ideas of free agents. They said they're going to go out there, get some things done, get some young starting pitching. They've been targeting with the Rangers, talking in 4 or 5 team deals, and everyone assumed that they would include Asdrubal Cabrera. Of course, that's the guy who's going to be traded. They don't need him. They have young prospects coming up, and they have a backup in Mike Aviles. Now, instead of trading Cabrera, I like this move a lot better for the Indians. Now, they still could trade Cabrera. Is it likely? Probably not. And the Justin Upton deal does not seem likely at all. Now I actually believe when GM Kevin Towers says, Upton is extremely unlikely. Now I believe it because the Diamondbacks are not in a position to trade away their best hitter. The Diamondbacks are in a position to contend. This is a 3-team deal between the Diamondbacks, the Indians, and the Reds. I think this is a win for all teams, but I think the Indians come out on top of this deal. The Diamondbacks overall, I think, have had an amazing offseason. They've really covered all of their areas of need and done it in effective and efficient ways. And they've also done it in some interesting creative trades as well. So let's look at from 3 sides here of the trade. The Indians trade their all-star and what some people would say their best hitter and most consistent hitter in Shin-Soo Choo to the Reds. Now, this is a big move for both teams. It shows the direction the Indians are going. The fact that they have not been able to come up with a contract extension for Choo is the biggest part of this deal. He is a free agent after 2013. So in the Reds' point of view, they're getting a great outfielder, but they also know if they're going to lock this guy up, they're going to have to do it. But I don't think they will. I think Billy Hamilton is really the obvious choice for them to take over center field for 2014. There's a guy who stole over 150 bases last year, just ridiculous speed. So the Reds, long-term, have Billy Hamilton. But for right now, they were able to acquire one of the best outfielders on the market, a very consistent hitter, had an OPS about the same as Josh Hamilton the last few years, has some power, has great on-base percentage, and a very good defense. Now, he's not played center field very much, only a few games, and that was like in 2006, 2007 when he first came up with the Mariners. So that's a question mark. The Reds look very good. There are some question marks with whether Chapman will be a starter or not, but those are not bad problems to have at all. I mean, these are problems created by excess talent, if anything. So the Reds are looking very good. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, who snuck in there the wild card game and almost made it to the World Series, are being very quiet this offseason with not many needs to address, though they could counter here, but we're already hearing that Skip Schumacher is headed to LA, so might be able to discuss that later. But let's get back to the 3-team deal here. So the Reds get their leadoff hitter, very good defense, and great bat there in Shin-Soo Choo. Very exciting. I think all Reds fans that I've heard from so far think that they got a great deal on here. Especially because, yes, they did trade Didi Gregorius, if that's how you say his name. I apologize if it's not. He's a Dutch-born shortstop who, for the Diamondbacks, was the main part of the deal for him. Now, I'm not sure if the Diamondbacks got full potential of what Trevor Bauer could have netted them, but for the Diamondbacks, they're dealing from a position of strength. They have tons of young starters. They did not have to give up Tyler Skaggs, and they did not give up Patrick Corbin. A lot of people believe both of those starters have higher potential and will be more successful in the major leagues right now than Trevor Bauer. I'm not 100% that's true. I think Tyler Skaggs is putting up his case, and I think, there's some risk with Trevor Bauer. This is a guy who has not gotten along too well with some of the Diamondbacks officials, has kind of odd routines. He's very much a power pitcher. There are some injury risks. There are some risks down the road with him. He's been compared to Tim Lincecum. He's got an odd delivery. I mean, there's some kind of wacky things about Trevor Bauer. But when you go down to it, he has great stuff, and he is a future and potential ace. This is a guy who I think is going to be a number 2 starter for the Indians for years to come. And the fact that he's 21 years old and his numbers in the minors suggest that he will adjust in the major leagues. I mean, this guy went 12-2. Had a 2.42 ERA in the minors. That's ridiculous. So, I mean, you see Trevor Bauer, he should have success in the major leagues, and I think he will. And I think the Indians are getting a fantastic starter for years to come. So I do really like the Indians moving this. They've been looking for young starting pitching, and they did it. And I'm actually surprised that they're able to pull off Trevor Bauer without giving up Asdrubal Cabrera, actually giving up someone who's controlled for a year less and still getting a center field replacement back in Drew Stubbs. Now, Drew Stubbs, he had a terrible year last year. He, a few years ago when he was like 24, he was having better years than he is now. I mean, he bat .213 last year, 14 home runs, and 166 strikeouts. That's pretty terrible. and you have that with Mark Reynolds, it's just an incredible amount of strikeouts in the wrongest way possible for the Indians. But the Indians, they're getting a good defensive player in Drew Stubbs. He's a very good defensive player, great arm there. And, he has the power potential, and he has the potential to get his average to at least 250. And I think that's what the Indians want. They don't necessarily need someone who's going to hit 280 to 300. Obviously, you'd like to see his strikeouts go down, and you hope that, switching to a new team will help with that adjustment. Because he has struggled in Cincinnati the last few years, and he has not gotten the most positive reaction from the fans there either. So I think Reds fans have got to be just ecstatic about getting a center fielder for just 2013 that's going to provide very consistent offense, on-base percentage almost at 400, be a perfect leadoff type. And the Reds desperately need a left-handed bat in that lineup. So that was a huge deal for the Reds there. I like it for the Reds, honestly. I think they gave up a lot of young talent there, and obviously giving up Drew Stubbs, but the way that he has been declining recently, that's almost nothing for the Reds to give up, especially getting a very good bat in Chu for 2013, and then being able to also get Jason Donald, a nice infield utility bat there from the Indians, and then in 2014 turning to Billy Hamilton, one of the top prospects in the game, rising up there very fast, just fantastic speed. I mean, just unbelievable speed. So, during the last few days, we've seen some big prospects being dealt. I've not been able to make a video on the Will Myers, James Shields. I was just extremely sick that day. I'm still trying to recover, and I just was not feeling it. But that was a huge blockbuster, and I was thinking a lot about that. Hopefully, I'll be able to cover that soon. But I think I like the Indians deal a lot. I think I like the Reds deal, and I think I really do like the Diamondbacks deal as well. Tony Sipp. Not a lot of guys are talking about him right now, but he's a very good reliever from the Indians, and the Indians will miss him. They are missing a presence of left-handed relief in their bullpen. I think they're going to go out and either make a move or do it internally, maybe take someone who's been developing more as a starter into a reliever. Either way, the Indians are losing some valuable bullpen pieces this offseason. I think that while the Diamondbacks and other teams are beefing up on their bullpen, the Indians definitely lost a little bit of lust in their bullpen, but I think they'll recover it. I mean, they have some money to work with. They're going to be very aggressive, and this has kind of been described as the tip of the iceberg. This is, they've been promising all these moves. This is the first move, and it's going to kind of unleash a domino effect, I think. And whether they do trade Cabrera or not, I don't think they will. If they're going to trade Cabrera, I think it's going to be next year, depending on how good or bad they do this season, because they're going to have some prospects that are going to be almost major league ready by the end of this year. And it seems more of a time to trade someone with a year left than 2 years. Because Asdrubal Cabrera, although he projects more as a third baseman, he still has very good offense that is key for this Indians team, especially if you're going to pair him in a lineup with maybe someone like Nick Swisher or Cody Ross. So they're going to be very aggressive in the outfield and starting pitching market. I think if they could get someone like Edwin Jackson or maybe more of a veteran guy like a Ryan Dempster or Sean Markham, and you pair him with Trevor Bauer in that rotation, the rotation keeps getting better and better. You still have Ubaldo Jimenez, although he has struggled. And the Indians have not really been involved with too many big deals like this of recent. Of course, you had the Ubaldo Jimenez trade, and that has not worked out at all for the Indians. Although it hasn't really worked out for the other teams either yet. But the Indians are really showing where they're going forward now. They are showing they got a new manager in Terry Francona. They want to win now, so they're going to be aggressive in the free agent market. And then they make a trade like this, need of young starting pitching that is major league ready. So the Indians, I like where they're going. They get a huge deal here. I think that it will work out well for them. I think they're definitely the winners of this deal. I also think the Reds accomplished what they needed to do. They had some young prospects that they could give up. And by doing so, they are now probably the favorite, of course, to win the Central again. I think the Cardinals will probably find a way to sneak in there in the wild card, but this National League is getting more and more competitive. When you have teams like the Diamondbacks, you have teams like the Giants, and of course the Dodgers. That West is just jam-packed with very good teams. And then you look at the Phillies starting to look more competitive. So it's really going to be very interesting to see how these teams actually do when it comes time to play. But the Reds have a team primed to win in 2013, no doubt about it. You add Shu to that mix, it's very hard not to like where the Reds are going too. Long term, I'm not 100% sure, but short term, they look fantastic. Now, you have the Diamondbacks. We have not talked a lot about them because there's just so much to talk about with the Indians and the Reds. So just to make sure I've covered it all, this is a huge deal. So the Reds, get Jason Donald and Shu, of course. The Indians get Trevor Bauer, Drew Stubbs, and then they get two relievers from the Diamondbacks, Matt Albers and Brian Shaw. Now, Matt Albers is an older reliever, has a lot of experience. That'll be a very nice addition to the Indian bullpen, who is losing Tony Sipp to the Diamondbacks, and then Brian Shaw. So I think, those are nice to a bullpen that I think could use another lefty reliever right now, and that's the Indians. So they got two pretty solid relievers there. They get a good replacement who has an opportunity to redeem himself in a new town in Cleveland, Drew Stubbs, who has good defense too. And really, that's a big thing. You just need a replacement. I mean, you can't give up Chu without getting some sort of replacement. So to have a decent player in Drew Stubbs, who has had very good years in the past, and at one point was one of the best young center fielders in the game, I think is nice for the Indians to be able to do that. And then Trevor Bauer, of course, is the big part of the deal for them. They get major league starting pitching, young, one of the biggest prospects in the game, and somehow do it without giving up Cabrera. It's pretty amazing. Now, for the Diamondbacks, they get Didi Gregorius, if that's how you say his name. I apologize. I sincerely apologize if that's not, but he is, one of the only Dutch-born Major League players out there. He is a fantastic defensive player. He's one of those defense first-side players. And really, the Diamondbacks prefer defense over offense in that position. I think that's why they ultimately went with someone like this over a guy like Asdrubal Cabrera, who projects more as a third baseman, but has more power and has more offense there, really. But another big thing is he's going to be controlled for 6 years at least, and Cabrera would have been for 2 years. So they get a long-term shortstop, which they desperately needed. And they also improve their bullpen with Tony Sipp. Now, by doing that and getting a nice depth piece in Lars Anderson, by doing that, you look at everything they've done this offseason, by getting Heath Bell, by signing Brandon McCarthy, which I think is going to turn out to be one of the best signings this whole year, really. A great value signing there. I think he'll do great. You have that rotation is full. I mean, they could trade an arm like Trevor Cahill, or they could try to trade for an elite starting pitching, but right now it looks pretty set right now. To be honest with you, it looks set. They've been trying to get that number one type starter. Probably not going to happen, especially if they're not going to give up a guy like Justin Upton. But you never know. The Rangers, I think the only possibility would be if the Rangers got an elite starting pitcher and then flipped it to the Diamondbacks for Justin Upton. But it doesn't seem likely at all. I mean, 99% chance that doesn't happen. Mainly because the Diamondbacks look like in a great position to contend for 2013. I mean, you look at all the deals they made this offseason. They trade Chris Young. They had a surplus there. They were talking about trading Jason Kubel. You have Parr who could step in there. You're talking about Justin Upton. And very public about Justin Upton, too. That's what so many people thought they would trade him eventually. Now I'm not so sure. I think maybe eventually he will be traded. But, for 2013, you don't want to trade your best offensive piece. I think he could come back and have a great year. You have Kubel, who had just an amazing year. Over 35 home runs. You pair them together offensively. Then you have Heath Bell, who's a setup man now for you that you acquired in the trade. You dealt from a surplus there. You sign Brandon McCarthy. You sign Eric Chavez. You get Eric Hinsky, which when they did that, it made it look like they would deal with Jason Kubel because they have so many different depth guys, which I think they still have a chance to trade Jason Kubel to maybe get that starter. But, you never know. They could always trade for more relief pitching. You really don't know with the Diamondbacks. They're a little unpredictable. But I like the move for the Diamondbacks. You deal from a surplus of young pitching to get that shortstop long-term answer. Obviously, one of the most highly regarded prospects in baseball for shortstop position. So real nice moves for the Diamondbacks. I think they have won the award so far for best offseason. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned and check me out on Twitter. Thanks.